Wow, did you see Dana Bash and her interview with JD Vance? It didn't go so well for Dana, and I just want you to know that this was probably the best interview that I've ever seen in my life. I had some doubts about JD Vance, but after this interview, man, does it fill me with confidence. Of course, we know that no man is perfect, but check out this interview about JD Vance, what he stands for, and Dana Bash. I do think you'll get a kick out of it, and we're going to be interjecting some of our thoughts more towards the end, and let's just get into it.
You so much for doing this.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, Senator.
Thank
so
you.
within a week of you being named on the VP ticket, the Democratic nominee changed. And you guys seem to be struggling a little bit with how to approach the new dynamic. How are you approaching your new opponent and the new ticket?
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty straightforward, actually. We're running against a set of policies that I think have failed the American people, and we're running to a set of policies, President Trump's 4 years in office, that I think really succeeded for the American people. And I think that what's different about it, and you're right, Dana, it is different, but what's different about it is that we're running against a different person who a lot of Americans just don't know. And so I think we have to remind people that President Trump delivered lower prices, lower inflation, a prosperous and peaceful world, and also a secure border. And Kamala Harris's policies have produced the exact opposite. Now, that was an easier case to make when Joe Biden was in there because people associate Joe Biden with the policies. But I think Kamala Harris clearly owns the policies of the Biden-Harris administration, especially when we consider the fact that, as we've all learned over the last few months, Joe Biden clearly isn't capable of doing the job. And so I think that drives home that Kamala Harris really has been the one calling the shots. I mean, how could she not? I think Joe Biden doesn't really know where he is.
Kamala Harris has been calling the shots, says who?
Well, I think she has to have been, right? Because if she's not calling the shots, Dana, then who is? And I do think it drives home something that's fundamentally dishonest about the way that Vice President Harris and also a lot of senior Democrats have approached this. If you remember, for months, even years, the argument was that Joe Biden was sharp, he could clearly do the job. And the minute that he performed poorly in that debate and he became political dead weight, you have Kamala Harris and everybody else trying to throw him overboard. But I think the more troubling question is, why did so many senior Democrats, including the vice president, cover for him? And if Joe Biden wasn't capable of doing the job, as even a lot of Democrats say now, was Kamala Harris in charge or was somebody else in charge? And that's a real issue.
There's no evidence that Kamala Harris threw him overboard, but I want to move on to something that Governor Walz has called you and Donald Trump, and that is weird.
Sure.
And it is taken off. The New York Times reports that when Donald Trump was asked about it, he said, "Not me, they're talking about JD."
Well, certainly they've levied that charge against me more than anybody else, but I think that it drives home how they're trying to distract from their own policy failures. I mean, look, this is fundamentally schoolyard bully stuff. They can accuse me of whatever they want to accuse me of. As Harry S. Truman once said, if you can't take the heat, stay out of the kitchen. And I'm doing this because I think that me being vice president will help improve people's lives. So I accept their attacks, but I think that it is a little bit of projection, Dana. If you think about just take a couple of days ago. Tim Walz gives this big speech. He's been announced as the VP nominee. And I remember when I had just been announced as the VP nominee, I gave my big speech and I saw my wife and I gave her a big hug and a kiss because I love my wife and I think that's what a normal person does. Tim Walz gave his wife a nice, firm Midwestern handshake and then tried to sort of awkwardly correct for it. So I think that what it is two people, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, who aren't comfortable in their own skin because they aren't comfortable with their policy positions for the American people. And so they're name calling instead of actually telling the American people how they're going to make their lives better. I think that's weird, Dana, but look, they can call me whatever they want to.
You're saying Tim Walz doesn't have affection for his wife? I don't even understand that.
I said that he acted weird, which he did, on a national stage in front of his wife and in front of millions of Americans who presumably were watching at home. And I think that it's projection, Dana. Look, I think this election should be about who's going to solve the inflation crisis, who's going to make groceries and housing more affordable, who's going to secure that southern border. Kamala Harris's record is that she supported all of the policies that made that problem worse, Dana. We're trying to say we're going to take the country in a different direction. I really think that it's important to point this out, Dana. Their entire campaign has not been about here's our policy for how we're going to make your life better, or here's what's wrong with Donald Trump and J.D. Vance's policies. We're going to name call and hope that you don't notice that we don't have an agenda. That is the entire Democrat approach to this election.
They have done both. They have both policies, and they are trying to define
Dana,
it as well.
If you go to Kamala Harris's campaign page right now, they still don't have a policy.
Well, let's talk about
policy positions about what they're going to do. I think that's really insulting to Americans.
You started out talking about the policies in this interview, but you have been on the campaign trail questioning Tim Walz's military record. You say it was shameful that Governor Walz retired from the military before his unit deployed to Iraq. I want to read you something that Joe Eustace, who is a veteran, he served with Governor Walz, said. He said that's a lie. He said he was as good a soldier as you'll find. I'm not trying to defend him. I hope people don't think that. What I'm trying to do is defend someone who served his country. I'm not voting for him. I'll campaign against him. But I don't think it's fair to characterize his service the way they have. Governor Walz served 24 years. He even stayed after he could have retired because of 9/11, more than the country asked of him. Do you honor his service?
Well, of course, Dana, I honor his service, and I've never criticized what Tim Walz did when he was in the military. I criticized his retirement decision, and most importantly, Dana, I criticized his lying about his own record, okay? This is a guy who was captured on video saying, I carried a gun in war. He never went to war. This is a guy who's been captured on video. As other people say, he's an Afghanistan veteran. He's a veteran of a war, nodding along in agreement instead of saying, no, I did serve my country and I did it honorably, but I never went to a war zone. I'm not criticizing Tim Walz's service. I'm criticizing the fact that he lied about his service for political gain, Dana. Now, I served in the United States Marine Corps, and you know this. And look, there are a lot of things that I'm proud about. I've never lied about what I did or overstated it because it would be beneficial to me in an election. I think that's what Tim Walz did. That's what I was criticizing. And yes, I do think it's scandalous behavior.
You talked about one of the things that he said, weapons of war. He was talking in a campaign stop about, he was trying to talk about gun control. And he said, weapons of war I carried in war. I will say that the Harris-Walz campaign did say that the governor misspoke there. Do you accept that?
He misspoke. Another word is that he lied about it, and he didn't correct the record for 15 years until he was put under political pressure because I called it out, Dana. Whatever, or a lie, I think Tim Walz should have to correct the record. Now, you pointed out a soldier who defended his service. There have been a number of soldiers who served with Tim Walz who have criticized him on the exact same grounds that I have because it's not right to misstate or to embellish what you've done, and I think that's what he did.
And on the question of...
Do you see how he's answering her? This is a statesman, not a politician. And that's what we need more of, especially in the Republican Party. Statesmen. He's answering her intelligently. This is awesome.
Of when he left the National Guard, he
I wonder if they're going to talk about his Chinese tour.
filed his election paperwork February 10th, 2005. That was a month before the National Guard even announced that it was possible that they would deploy to Iraq, and it ended up being 2 months. He retired 2 months before they actually got the paperwork.
But on CNN last night, Dana, one of the people who was actually in charge of him said they knew they were going to deploy to Iraq in February of 2004, fall of 2004. So he knew he was going to Iraq. He decided to quit, to retire, whatever word you want to use.
Retire.
Because he wanted to run for Congress. He lied about that. He said that when he decided to retire, he did not know that he was going to Iraq. That is another untruth, as even his senior military officer said. So again, I'm not criticizing the service. I'm criticizing the dishonesty. Dishonesty spoken in favor and for the purpose of political benefit. And I think that the most important thing here, Dana, is it goes to Kamala Harris's judgment. Tim Walz is ultimately going to be the vice president. Kamala Harris is in great health. I'm sure she's going to be president if she wins for 4 or maybe even 8 years. Why did Kamala Harris choose a person who has lied about their military service? I think that is a serious lapse in judgment. And I don't want to hear from a campaign spokesperson of Kamala Harris. I want to hear Kamala Harris herself address what I just said.
You know, I've seen a lot of statements from veterans, including those you served with, saying it's just untoward to be criticizing somebody who served for 24 years.
You're still doing that?
I'm not interested in the ad hominem. I've heard from a lot of veterans groups who criticize Tim Walz. The question is, he said he served in war, and he didn't. That is a dishonesty. I couldn't care less what one or the other person says about it. I care about what the truth is. The truth is that Tim Walz didn't tell the truth. And importantly, Dana, this is about Kamala Harris's judgment. And I think that when you ask, why has Kamala Harris allowed the border to be wide open? Why has Kamala Harris supported policies that have promoted the increase in inflation? I think it goes to the heart of her judgment, and I think that that's what we should be talking about.
One last question. Donald Trump didn't serve in the military. He received a medical draft deferment for bone spurs to avoid serving in the Vietnam War, reportedly as a favor to his father. Do you find that shameful, too?
I think that Donald Trump didn't serve in the military, but he didn't lie about it, Dana. I've known Donald Trump for a long time. He really honors our veterans. He honors me for my service. Donald Trump didn't lie about serving in the military. He didn't say that he went to Vietnam when he didn't. This is the problem. I don't criticize anybody. Whether they served our country or not, I think it's honorable to serve, but obviously a lot of people have reasons for not serving. I criticize somebody for embellishing their record, for lying, saying, I went to war. Dana, do you think that it's a problem that he said, I went to war, but he didn't actually? That seems to be a problem to me.
Well, they've corrected that. Let's move on to...
They've corrected it by admitting that
Let's move on to another important issue to voters, and
Please.
that is the issue of abortion. You wrote the foreword for a new book by Heritage Foundation President Kevin Roberts of Project 2025. Project 2025, among many other things, calls for rolling back approval of the abortion drug mifepristone. Donald Trump told me during the debate that he would not block the drug. And on Thursday, when he was asked, he didn't rule it out. So which is it?
Well, look, Dana, first of all, Project 2025 is not affiliated with the Trump campaign. Kevin Roberts is a friend of mine, but I wouldn't say that he speaks for the president in the same way I wouldn't say that he speaks for me. Now, what Donald Trump has said is that he respects the Supreme Court's opinion on the mifepristone ruling.
But let me just stop you right there.
Please.
The Supreme Court, you're a lawyer, so you know this better than I.
Sure.
The Supreme Court, all they did was say that what came to them didn't have standing. So they let it stand. A real question, a substantive question, hasn't made it to the Supreme Court. So my question for you is whether or not a Trump-Vance administration would allow mifepristone to continue to be sent around the country.
Well, President Trump won the nomination of the Republican Party. He said it to you, and he said it repeatedly, that his goal is not to block mifepristone, it's to let states make the decision on abortion policy. Now, of course, that does mean, Dana, we have to be honest about this, that California might have less restrictive rules than Ohio, which might have less restrictive rules than Alabama. I think what President Trump is really trying to do on the abortion question is really admirable, and I wish the press was a little bit more honest about it. He's saying we've had a 50-year culture war over abortion, where unfortunately this issue has just divided the country, and he wants to provide some ground for us to come together, for states to make these decisions, for voters to make these decisions, and for us all to respect one another. That's all he's proposed.
On that issue, a few months ago, on the question, his position, which you've adopted, is it is up to the states. I spoke to a woman named Kate Cox. She lives in Texas.
Sure.
She was 20 weeks pregnant. Her fetus was diagnosed with a disease it was a deadly genetic condition called trisomy 18. She said that carrying the pregnancy, she was told this by her doctors, to term, if the fetus even survived, would hurt her chances for having more children, which she and her husband desperately wanted. Why is not allowing her to end that pregnancy helpful or supportive of expanding families like you want it to be?
Well, first of all, Dana, my heart breaks for this woman. I don't know her personally. I've certainly heard the story, and our heart breaks for her. And we want people to have healthy, happy families. And it's extremely unfortunate that sometimes, medicine, the act of God, whatever happens, it just doesn't work out. What the president has said, I think, very clearly is that he is not trying to prevent women who have non-viable pregnancies from getting access to the medical care that they need.
But allowing the states to decide, a place like Texas, which has very strict laws now, doesn't allow a Kate Cox to end a pregnancy that is fatal and could potentially hurt her ability to have more kids.
But what President
You do understand that the states created the federal government. It seems like she's for a democracy instead of a republic. That's what this nation is, a constitutional republic. It seems like there's a foundational understanding that's missing out of this. And I can't call Dana Bash a journalist. She seems like an activist at this point. But that's why understanding, wisdom, knowledge is so important about this nation. Let's continue.
What Trump has said is that we are going to let voters make these decisions. And again, Texas might have a view that President
That's
Trump
how the
disagrees
Constitution
with.
wants it.
They might have a view that President Trump agrees with, but you've got to let the voters make these decisions.
So you're
And
comfortable with that
ultimately,
law in Texas?
I'm not comfortable with anything, Dana, because I'm not passing judgment on what these laws should be. And you ask me my own personal view. I campaigned against an Ohio referendum, but I think that we have to let voters decide. And when they speak their mind, you have to be respectful. Agree or disagree with whatever voters decide, they're going to make these decisions.
Isn't that right, Dana? Isn't that right? This is a free country, isn't it? It's up to the states. The founding fathers wanted it to be up to the states, not centralized, where you bully those that are below you or you consider below you.
Welcome back to State of the Union. Here's more.
So she basically got bashed. Dana Bash got bashed in this interview, but it was very intelligent. It was very sensitive. JD Vance was just, he was trying his best to make her see, to cause her to see that this is something that is beyond what his scope was, right? He cannot legislate these laws. He's allowing these different sections, the federal, the legislative, and also, or the executive, the legislative, and also the judicial branches to do their business while he is balanced and makes sure that he's not overstepping his bounds. That's something that the federal government has been doing over and over again. And so we are thankful, very thankful for this interview. This is how every interview should go. There were no name calling, right? JD Vance didn't name call anyone. I wish that President Trump would actually take a lesson from that, kind of be more wise in the words that he's using, have more grace. He got an A, in my opinion. JD Vance got an A on this one. We really appreciate him. But tell me your thoughts in the comment box below. God bless you, and let me know what you think.